Morning. Agenda review. Looking towards the agenda on Wednesday, March 6, 2024. And your last meeting we had was a 6-hour meeting. You anticipating this going to be a 6-hour meeting as well?
No, we don't anticipate that. Tanya, are you talking about county?
Well, Pete, Commissioner Meitzner is at a ribbon cutting. Commissioner Lopez is on Zoom. I think everybody, the whole party's here, so you take it away, Tom.
On public announcements.
Good morning. For county announcements next Wednesday, Nicole will talk about Severe Weather Preparedness Week, and that will be presented by Emergency Management. And so there will be a statewide tornado drill at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, March 6th. And then the USS Wichita crew will be there next Wednesday visiting and will give an update. And then she's going to give an update on the presidential preference primary. And just for dates, March 4th is the advance in-person voting, which will begin at the election office. March 12th is the advance in-person voting, which begins at satellite locations. And then March 19th is the presidential preference primary election day. And so polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so those will be the county announcements.
Commissioners, we have one proclamation declaring Health and Wellness Coalition's 20th anniversary. That's item C. Item D, we have one appointment in Commissioner Beatty's district. And then we have new business. And I'd almost ask Scott Wadle to come to the table, but I think he's briefed you on all of these. Item E is a conditional request in the county to permit an event center in Commissioner Howell's district. I think you've all been briefed on that, and Scott is here today if there's any further question or explanation. Item F is an amendment to modify the Wichita-Sedgwick County zoning code, and I think you've been briefed on that. He will present that as new business. We continue with land use issues. Item G is the consideration of an extension of the solar energy conversion systems moratorium. And I think you've all been briefed on by Kirk on what is happening in that regard. Kirk here, but sorry. Yeah, Kirk is here for the questions on that. Tim on item H will give us the update, the annual presentation from Exploration Place. Item I is a comeback from a couple of weeks ago. What was on bid board, it is an LED display acquisition for health. I think Commissioner Dennis still has questions on that. Adrian or Tim or both will be at the podium on Wednesday as a new business item. Joel will present that, but then we will have staff there to further discuss that.
And there's nothing in the backup minutes for this agenda, and I had a lot of questions on it, so I'll have a lot of questions when you bench them since they haven't been answered. Thank you. Okay.
And we'll try to get some information to Commission on that. Thanks. And then item J is the back to schedule order bids and contracts, a discussion from Joe. Under consent, item K is a rezoning matter for Clear Lakes PUD. Item L is a release of a temporary easement that has been an easement since 2013. I think Lynn has determined we don't need the easement anymore, so that's the release of that easement. Questions? Item M is a consideration of signature authority. Tim and I talked on this. Historically, Annette has had the authority to sign on those types of documents, but I think annually you have to re-give her that authority. So that's item M. Item N is a consideration to renew the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas crisis bed agreement at a fiscal cost of $425,000, which is paid through a KDEBS grant. Renewal of that. Item O is consideration of Mental Health America Transitional Housing Services Agreement for calendar 2024. That is a fiscal note of 148,615 renewal. I think it's for 6 houses. If I'm not 6 beds. Item P is our annual funding agreement with CAC that the commission approved during last August budget ratification, a fiscal note of $218,000 to be paid for 2024.
I have no problem with that, item P, but I asked several questions during the, budget retreat on whether or not the city of Wichita is funding, the Child Advocacy Center. I never got an answer for any of the questions that I asked.
I sent the city manager an email asking about Child Advocacy Center, Exploration Place, and one other. Let me get back to you. He has replied, and I cannot remember what they said on CAC. I'll get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item Q is an agreement with Central Plains Healthcare Partnership. We want full 10 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. This is, yeah, we've had between the two rough agendas, we had a little bit of change. This is the project access renewal. And then the new item R, we're going to pull. We need a little bit more research on that. So that should read request to reallocate budget authority to the amount of 570,000, et cetera. So we're going to pull that temporarily and go back and do more research on that. Item S is position reclassifications, and I think there were one is we're reclassifying the deputy director of emergency communications. She was not part of the 6% package that the commission allowed last Wednesday, so we are giving her a 6% and reclassifying her up one step. And Kelly Arnold has a reclassification in the clerk's office also. So those two classifications are item S. And then item E is an annexation for the city of Clearwater. And then the rest is routine business on the main agenda. Then we have a fire agenda. And item B is a comeback from a couple of weeks ago. Rusty talked to that a little. There's been a little bit of development on that. That was where we were going to sever the contract with Derby on plans review. So Rusty, if you can give commission the latest on
Sure. I've been in communication with Kyle, the city administrator for Derby. I would recommend that we pull this item off the agenda. I think we have a working agreement and we would revisit this probably in June. Come back to the commission in June. If it's okay with you, we'll pull it for now. I've talked to Chief Williams. I just talked to Fire Marshal. He's sitting back there about it. And
So by June, we won't be doing this? Is that what you're telling me?
the anticipation is that Derby's new fire marshal will have his certifications by the end of April, early May. And Kyle had just asked that we give them about another 30, 60 days there to make sure that everything's functioning. He doesn't really anticipate development projects coming in over the next 2 or 3 months. So they're unlikely to push any plans to our fire district. So he's just asked if we could give him, I'll be talking to him between now and then, but around the 1st of June, he and I will talk again. And if probably at that point, we'll bring it back to you and we'll take the necessary action.
If you bring it back to us 1st June, we've got to give him 60 days notice. So that's August before we.
I can talk to him in May, but he and I had agreed that we would discuss it in June, and he said he would, at that point, if they're ready to sever, then he would be willing to waive the 60 days.
But from what I understand, why it takes like 4 days to train an individual to be able to do this work. There's classes regularly.
There are classes and certifications, and I can't speak to that. Fire Marshal Crisp is in the back there.
Brad, you want to come up? Sure. Get it.
You can sit right here if you want.
So there are different avenues for certification for plan review. Some of them are 2-day classes, some of them are online classes, some of them are in-person 5-day classes. They're pretty common, they're pretty frequent, and it would only take a week or so for an individual to take these classes, get their certification, and then put it into practice. I would say that the application piece of that can be a little more complicated because a class is a class, but when you start doing it yourself, you have questions and you want to, reference other probably more experienced people, and we would be more than willing to assist in any way we can if you had questions or concerns.
But we know who the new fire marshal is, and he's very highly thought of. My only concern is that if we wait until June to then notify them, now it's August before we drop it. So I don't understand why we would have to wait until June to notify them. If this individual can get into training, and I talked to Chief Chris yesterday about this very subject, and there's classes all the time, so he could get into classes. I truly do understand that he probably ought to ride with some of our folks for a month or two in order to get used to what's going on. But I don't understand us waiting until June to notify them, which puts it into August before that we can terminate it. I don't know why we couldn't back it up a couple months and on 1 June have them take it over. This is putting a stress on our fire department.
So it's my understanding that Derby has provided 2 projects that the fire district in around January 30th, they gave 2 projects to the fire district to do plans review on. And Kyle is saying that they have none scheduled right now. They don't anticipate any. If it's the will of the commission, I'll go back and talk to Kyle again and see if he wants to accelerate that to May 1st and do 60 days. Like I said, he was willing to waive the 60 days whenever he felt like their fire marshal was ready to stand on his own. He just wants to have this as a backup. And that's why he asked to wait until June, is so that he had us as a backup in case something big came up that they weren't anticipating and he needed some backup, he would have it available.
There's 2 questions here. Brad, is it what they're asking for here? Is it reasonable? I mean, is it reasonable for them to get this training and then do some shadowing either with us or I think Newton or Wichita, some fire marshal?
Yes, sir.
Is that reasonable to ask? And then number 2 is if he's certified on May 17th, then to me, that's when it comes back to the commission. They waive the 60-day clause and we're done. I mean, is it that simple, or is that what Kyle's indicating when you're talking to him?
That's what he was indicating, is he doesn't want to prematurely sever the contract and then get in a bind. So he's just asking for reasonable consideration.
And we were anticipating needing to continue to provide these services for an additional 60 days once the commission had weighed in on it anyhow. So if it's another 30 days or so, that's not that big of a deal.
Well, I want a termination date. And it's getting kind of wishy-washy. Is the termination date the 1st of June or the 1st of August? When is the last date that we'll be performing these services?
I'll talk to Kyle. We'll get a sever date. Is it okay to remove this from or do you want this on the agenda?
I don't have a problem. I kind of defer some of this to Commissioner Howell because it's his district, but I also worry very much about fire district number 1 because that's our district.
I appreciate your concerns, Commissioner. I would say they are committed to ramping up. They are going to take this over. It is going to happen as soon as possible. I just don't want to pull a rug out from under them and cause a hardship. I think if it's a 30 days difference, it shouldn't make a huge difference. And by the way, our commitment to reviewing their plans and some, I know there's a 2-week goal or whatever to do that. But I'm not sure we've actually hit that goal for the last number of years because we're busy with our own work. I don't know that, if this went on 30 days longer than it would have had we done this last week, that it's going to substantially impact our fire district at that point. I'll just say this. I said this before, I'll say it again. They are ramping up and we are weaning ourselves off of this. If both contracts are in place, let's say even till the end of the year, but they're doing all of the work, let's say the end of May to the end of the year, this contract doesn't do anything, doesn't actually cause us to do anything at all. There's no burden to our county Sedgwick County Fire District number 1 if they're doing 100% of the work. The contract frankly just allows us to provide those services. It doesn't cause us to do it. Now, right now, since they have no other options, right now we are their only way to get this done at the moment, but they're ramping this up and they will be there, you said, by probably around the end of May or so. They will be able to take this on 100%. So if we cancel the contract right at that exact moment or a month later, this has no real net effect on our district. If they're doing all the work and this gets canceled later, or even if you give them 60 days at that point, it doesn't substantially change what we have to do for the fire district for them. I mean, ending the contract is a good idea. But once they're doing 100% of the work, the date the contract goes away doesn't matter at that point. So all I'm saying is rather than us just simply forcing, if you will, a hardship on the city, let them ramp up. They're doing it. They're committed to doing it. They're being aggressive as they can. It takes some, not just certification, but takes some experience. Know what you're saying, Chief? And that experience might take them a few weeks to get, where they're comfortable saying, okay, we got this now. In the meantime, if they ask for help, they ask for some expertise, this contract gives them cover. So we're moving towards a transitioning from us to them. But if this contract stays in place while they're doing 100% at some point soon, this contract doesn't actually have any bearing on what we're doing here. So what's the rush?
I do feel better than I did 2 weeks ago because I know this is on the optics now of the city manager and their council. So I do agree. I think there's a move forward on this and it's going to be administrated. So I feel better than I did 2 weeks ago because I didn't know if the city manager had knowledge of what our issue was or not. And Rusty has made sure he does now. So.
And I don't have a problem with pulling it, but I want regular reports then on how much service that we're providing every time that we provide service, how much it is, where they're at on their training program, and when we can finally move this off of our radar. Thank you.
That leaves, if we're going to pull that leaves one consent item, which is a grant and just a little over 179,000. And I think that is to purchase 132 sets of dual certified wildland firefighting and rescue PPE. That's what's left on the agenda. And that is all for the fire agenda. And that is.
Yeah. Tim, I got a question back on the BOCC agenda consent in the SAC agreement. How many beds is that? We're operating with? They're operating.
Well, right now,
And these is social detox beds. Is that what that is?
there's 18 total and they flex between sobering beds and social detox beds.
Very good. Any other questions on these agendas? Is that all we got, sir? Okay. That's all we got. That's all we got.
Can I talk about legislative?
Oh, it's a late entry. Yeah, please do.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Just want to bring up some legislative issues for next week. First item is we have a hearing on House Bill, or legislature has a hearing on House Bill 2723. That is with the House Welfare Reform. And Chairman Beatty has offered to testify on that bill next week. And so written testimony has been put together by Adrian and would like to hand that out to you for review. Do you want to pass it? And so I sent this to you early morning today, and this is, I think, similar to what you have probably seen before on this written testimony. This would be signed by the chairman, and again, we would get this up to Jason and Jessica on Monday for the chairman to be able to testify in person on Tuesday on this bill.
Okay. Any questions on this letter? Comments on this letter?
I have a couple of comments. Again, I think it's imperative that we provide testimony and written testimony and have someone testify as well. And I guess that is the plan. Just a couple of points. I've been following this legislation pretty closely for a number of reasons. I'm gonna be a little bit picky here with some of the words that are used here. On the third paragraph down, it says requires local governments to use funds received for the building or improvement of shelters It says, and the provision of wraparound services. I like to change the word and to the word for. Because we're not providing the money for wraparound services. We're providing the money, we're providing the money to create the view of the space for these services to be provided. And I don't want someone to think that this money is going to be used for ongoing year after year type of funding. You need to make sure they understand this is infrastructure only. And to that end, the last sentence of that same paragraph, it says, by requiring a dollar for dollar match for state funding, I'd like to insert the words for shelter infrastructure.
Clarify where you're looking at there.
Third paragraph, where it starts out HB 2323.
Okay.
Last sentence in that paragraph says, I'll read the last half of the sentence, is by requiring a dollar for dollar local match for state funding. And it currently says comma, while also utilizing clawback provisions. I'd like to insert the words after the word funding for shelter infrastructure. It's clear what we're asking for. What any of the applicants would be asking for. And then I guess go back up to the second paragraph where it says last sentence of the second paragraph says HB 2723 would provide necessary funding to local governments to allow them to, I'd like to insert the words, create the necessary infrastructure to connect right now says currently it says unhoused Kansans. Again, I'm adding the words create the necessary infrastructure. That's a theme here. And a reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of confusion what this bill does. And I'm trying to just, if you will, hammer this point home. It's for infrastructure. It's what this is for. It's not for services. It's so that we have a place to provide services, or I should say services can be provided. It provides the space. And I guess the last comment I'd make is this. I know it's politically popular and it's almost like people hear it and they repeat what they hear. There's been a cultural transition to use the word unhoused versus the word homeless. I just printed off a 25-page essay on the difference between those two words. We feel like they're interchangeable, perhaps, when we talk about things. It's a less of a harsh word to use the word unhoused, but it's actually not accurate. The point in time count we just did, that was not looking for unhoused people. That was looking for homeless people. You say, well, maybe that's the same population. It very well might be. Someone who's unhoused might be homeless. What do I mean by that? The difference is, if you go look this up, the connotation is that people who are homeless are struggling with lots of other issues in life, like substance abuse, mental illness, relationship challenges, joblessness, all kinds of other things. Unhoused could be they couldn't make their mortgage payment and they got evicted. And now they're staying with a friend, or they're living in a car, or they're going to travel across the country to find a different opportunity, or they're going to change houses. They're between homes right now. They may not need our services. The word unhoused is a kinder word, but it's also not accurate. I think what we're talking about right now is the folks living on the streets of Wichita. And the best word to use, but the reason I think this is important is if you use the politically correct word of unhoused in this here, I think you're softening our request. The legislature needs to realize we're dealing with a homeless problem of people living on the streets of Wichita. And I don't want to soften that necessarily. I don't want to be offensive to those that are struggling, but I think to use the politically correct word of unhoused versus the word homeless, it does soften the idea. And I don't think that this is not a time to be soft. This is time for us to basically let them see what's really going on. Let's talk about the homeless problem on the streets of Wichita and other communities as well. It's a homeless problem, and I'm not scared of that word. I think we ought to use. By the way, the bill does not use the word unhoused. It uses the word homeless, and so I think it does matter. And I know I'm being picky, but if you really want to send the message to the legislature, you have to use the correct words, and these words matter. So that's my changes. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Is the city of Wichita also testifying on this bill?
Did you know, it's during the middle of their council meeting, so I know they're not sending someone up. There was conversations. We had a conversation with Mayor Wu yesterday to see if she was able to come up and take some meetings with us in Topeka. Commissioner Meitzer is also going to accompany me and try to take some meetings. And she has council meeting. So I don't know if they're submitting written testimony.
I don't know. I can find out through Jason and Jessica.
But it concerns me a little bit because every step of the way, it looks like Sedgwick County is the point for homelessness, and I do not believe we're the point for it. City of Wichita has to be the point for homelessness. And I don't want it to appear to the legislators that this is our program. We're supporting, we're good partners with Wichita, but we are not the point.
Yeah, I would assume they're going to submit written testimony based on the conversations I've had. I don't know that to be sure, but I'd assume they are. They have been up there quite a bit. I know that they have been. So could we find out if they're going to submit? I'd imagine they will. And I'm sure Jason Watkins could probably let us know as well if they're submitting. But
I'll also say that their lobbyist, Brighton Carpenter, I think Marley Carpenter spoke to this just yesterday, I believe. So they're engaging this from the lobbyist supports, I believe. And I don't think they're not silent on the issue. And to your point, again, Commissioner, I agree. I hope we're clear to everyone. We are not obligating ourselves in any way to any financial long-term support to this. If there's any future supports in any way, that's a future discussion for another day. What we're after right now is getting the law in place. I think one of the things I would stress is we're pretty good at passing laws. Sedgwick County is one of the very best municipalities in the entire state of Kansas that gets stuff done in the state house. And I think this is one of the things where this is a problem that does impact Sedgwick County. We've been involved in the discussion. We have a member of our own commission that serves on the homeless task force. And so at the end of the day, this has been a community discussion, and I think we're close to getting this done. If this law was to pass, and I think right now it seems like it's a long stretch at this point if it was to pass. But Wichita is going to have to be one that applies for the funds. They're the ones that are going to have to own the building. It's their out Sedgwick counties. But we're going to do our very best to get this legislation in place. And if they choose to exercise the option or not, that's their choice. And I think that, again, they have been in agreement with us, although I think we've been leading because I think we are just more capable or aggressive in understanding how legislative process works. And so I don't think that they're contrary to us in any way. They just don't quite have the same cards in the deck that I think we have to get this done.
I would say also, there's a lot of balls that are in the air right now with the legislature. We have a pretty dynamic legislative platform that we're trying to advance and having some success in some areas. Priority number one, we believe this to be an issue, and then we believe the county is obviously impacted because of the human element and utilizers of high public services. My top priority, and I think most of our top priority, is our legislative agenda and this hospital and working through this. And we shouldn't conflate the two. This is certainly important, and we're going to continue advocating for it. But we're also going to take the time in Topeka to have conversations about the hospital and make sure that we're still advocating for what we feel is the best approach to make sure we get a hospital here in Sedgwick County. So to your point, I certainly don't disagree at all. We want to make sure it's clear that what our role is, and we'll make sure to continue to do that while we're in Topeka visiting with our partners. Any other legislative issues?
Oh, I've got a bunch.
Okay.
All right, next item is, this was at the request of Commissioner Meitzner. He would like to send up written testimony in support of Senate Bill 349, which is a bill that speaks to the funding mechanism for the extension of the Heartland Flyer. And so I might lean on Commissioner Meitzner if you want to speak to this particular bill or this letter in support of this bill.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. And on that last thing that we just talked about, Jim, I think can you explain maybe in another conversation the clawback? Because I see that in there and I don't know how strong it's going to be, but we can talk about it offline. Okay, thank you. On this one, Senator McGinn, working with Ty Masterson, they did a bill in the Senate that's referenced here, and it passed 34-6, pretty strong vote. And so that bill is being potentially up for discussion in the House. So there's been a request for a number of support letters still to go to Chairman Shannon Francis. If he's going to hear it or not, we don't know. So, but this is just a continuation of a support letter for the Senate Bill 349. It's not the end of the world if he doesn't hear it. It's KDOT's still working on the service development plan that'll be done in maybe March, but April. So, but it helps plant the seed for if there's a shortfall in revenue in the future, but the future is still years away. So it's not vitally urgent, but I think it's consistent with our support. And I think City of Wichita's got a letter up as well. So if it's all right with you guys, we could authorize the chairman to sign it, and we just.
I have no objections.
Okay. Right.
Commissioner Lopez, welcome. Speak up whenever convenient. Have any, Commissioner Howell, any objections there?
Okay.
Okay, good. We good?
Okay, I've got a few more items. Adrian just let me know before the meeting that there is a hearing on the Father Capen bill. And so that is Tuesday at 9 a.m. So I don't know if we want to continue with our written testimony on that, or Commissioner Dennis, if you want to go up there in person. That is Tuesday at 9 a.m. So just.
I'm going to be up there.
Okay.
I plan on being up there early. If you can't make it, I'd be glad to testify there. If that would help you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. And then let me just give a couple other updates. Senate Bill 362, which is our nuisance abatement bill. There's going to be a hearing next Wednesday. Chris Labrum will be up there to testify on that bill. And Jason was able to move that bill separately from the other counties on that bill. So he got a win for us on that. I sent you a bill that came out. I can't remember if I sent that yesterday or the day before, that House Bill 2815, which was abolishing LAVTR and the city county sharing. Want to give you an update on that. We heard from Jason, Senate Bill 468, which was the Eco Devo, the tax incentive bill that can't exceed the revenue neutral rate. He basically informed us that most likely will not move out of committee. And then Senate Bill 500, that was the when you have a revoked driver's license and getting the privileges to be able to take your children to and from school or daycare, that is going to move out of committee. So that is a positive. So those are my updates.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I sent Tanya a note this morning about CDDO on the wait list.
Mhm.
There is some movement with the legislature, and that is one of the items on our legislative agenda, is to reduce the wait list for those that are needing services. So hopefully that article in the newspaper today spurs some more action. And it appeared to me that there's some action going on right now in the legislature from that article that says that they are trying to increase the amount of funding to reduce the wait list. And there's some movement to even increase what was being worked, but I don't know what the bill is, and I don't know what we've been doing to move that bill forward. So it is one of our legislative agenda items. So we need to get some testimony to support that? When is it going to be heard? Who's working it? So I don't have any details about what's happening at the legislature.
That's being worked in the appropriations committees right now. And so there has been some real positive movement. The governor had included in her recommended budget an increase of 500 or funding to reduce the waiting list by 500 slots. In the House Budget Committee, Social Service Budget Committee, that was supported in addition to cap the waiting list at 4,800, and then of course work to move that down later. They also added $1 million to restore some funding to some state aid funding to CDDOs that they use to address needs for people that either are eligible but haven't gotten on the waiting list, or they're on the waiting list, just haven't come up to the waiting list. And then they included $13 million for additional rates for providers to help with the wages that are impacting their workforce issues. So that's all happening in the budget committees. And then on the Senate side, they supported 250 slots rather than the 500, but did support the $1 million and 13.
So do we have Jessica and Jason working on those with the budget?
They are certainly aware of what we have on our platform, and I can reach out to them and make sure that we're having a conversation on this.
The statewide Interhab is the association that supports all of the CDO providers and the CSPs. And they're the ones that are actually working. So, and they're working very diligently.
But as Commissioner Howell said, Sedgwick County is well thought of up there right now. And I want to make sure that they understand that Sedgwick County strongly supports reducing the wait list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more legislative updates?
Oh,
Have you been busy?
I have been
I
busy.
know, yeah. Tom, anything else? Anybody else have anything to add today? Okay. That being said, have a great weekend. See you on Monday.